out, and when it did, it shot up massive stacks of ash into the air that people in the nearby towns could feel for themselves very quickly. Things were going downhill.
Reapers, what's is good? It's your boy Laser. Using the visor back with another reaction video. He's on the reaction content, so I continue to deliver that for you guys. This is reacting to natural disasters on camera. Because there's so many crazy natural disasters that have happened in the past where I dive straight into them. If you guys enjoy the reaction content, use more reaction videos like this in the future, simply hit the like button, you subscribe, and your notification only takes less than a second. Let's dive straight into this video.
Extreme natural disasters caught on camera.
These natural disasters are crazy. Oh, they got a flying banana. It's a skin from fucking Fortnite, bro.
Number 20. Multi-vortex tornado. We're going to begin with one of the natural disasters that Mother Nature has that most of you may be familiar with. That would be a tornado. These can happen in almost any storm if the situation is right, and once they touch down on the ground, they can cause so much damage that entire cities and towns can be wiped off the map from their destructive force. For proof of that, you need only to look at the tornadoes that devastated Oklahoma back in 2011. During just 3 days, 267 tornadoes would be reported in that state. Think about that for a moment. This was not the case of...
Like, genuine question to all the people that live in Oklahoma. How the fuck do you, like, just function daily out there? Like, it seems like you have a tornado every fucking
one
day.
Tornado coming down and doing damage. It was literally hundreds of them. But as interesting and horrifying as that may be, to see a video of hundreds of twisters at once, that's not what we're looking at here. Instead, we're looking at a rare version of these twisters, known as a multi-vortex tornado.
No way, bro. That's spinning fast as shit. And bro, remember when tornadoes aren't moving,
you see, a tornado is typically singular, having one funnel cloud that eventually touches down on the ground. But in this case, the storm was so perfect in its setup that there were 3 tornadoes right next to each other and circling around that same spot. The camera footage you're watching shows all 3 of those tornadoes in their horrifying glory.
Shit.
What's more, these were not even small tornadoes. They were actually F3 or more, meaning that they were big and had wind speeds of over 250 kilometers per hour. More than enough to do some damage in the areas that they were touching down in. There was a lot of damage done by these tornadoes during that weekend, and some people even lost their lives. So when that tornado siren sounds, you go to your shelter so you can weather the storm. Before we go on, like this video, smash the subscribe button, and click the notification bell right now, or this centipede will crawl on your face when you're sleeping.
Bro, I feel something crawling on my skin right now, bro.
Number 19. The Turkey-Syria earthquake.
What happened to that car, bro?
The sad part about Mother Nature and her moods is that you don't have to look that far back into the past to see how bad that things can get. Case in point, there was a massive earthquake recently that hit the Turkey-Syria border and spread all throughout the 2 countries with such ferocity that it devastated both countries in numerous ways.
No way.
Just alone in Turkey, it was estimated that about 14 million people had been affected by the earthquake, and that was only in Turkey alone. Sadly, many people would lose their lives between the 2 countries, with the death toll equaling nearly 60,000 people.
But see, bro, some natural disasters are just unfair because, like, some you just can't prepare for. Like, for example, earthquakes just come out of the blue. Like, you can't prepare for that, really, you know? It just happens.
That makes it easily one of the deadliest modern disasters in history. And if that's still not enough for you, the damage that was done to both sides in terms of the roads, the city, and more equated to $120 billion.
Nah, dude, no way. Way, bro. You got debris.
The damage was so bad, in fact, that rescue and relief efforts kept getting hindered because of how bad that it was, and that shows you a lot right there. Oh, and that's all before you see the various videos and perspectives that chronicle the earthquake as it occurred. Remember, when an earthquake strikes, it doesn't give you a whole lot of warning. It just begins to shake, rattle, and roll you. Everything will be fine one moment, and then it's not. As you can see in these clips, there are objects being moved so violently that they're flying all over the place, or their doors are flying open. There's even a shot of a ship at dock just being jostled around so much that it damages the vessel. One can only imagine how the people felt when the earthquake hit, and then how they reacted once everything ended and the damage was visible. That's why so many are trying to send relief to the countries, because both sides have not recovered yet by a long shot.
Nah, no way.
Number 18.
Number 18.
California mudslides. When you think of natural disasters taking place in California, you may typically think of wildfires, but there are other things that hit that state that are equally as devastating, such as in 2022 when some devastating mudslides hit that state pretty hard. This all took place when a massive tropical storm would hit the area, and when mixed with the high winds, it created some mudslides. And once a mudslide begins, you really don't want to be in its way. But it's just mud, it can't hurt anyone, you might say, to which I would retort with, how much mud have you seen stacked upon itself? Yes, a little bit of mud, like the kind you might throw at your friends, is not going to kill you, but when you stack millions of gallons of mud on something, that's a completely different story. Even a liquid substance has mass, and that mass adds up over time. The case in point, in these mudslides, one home in California would be literally buried in mud, as in the mud was stacked so high that it reached the roof of the house and that roof caved in. So yes, mud can hurt, and if you're unfortunate enough to be in an area with a mudslide, you'll need to get out of its flow as soon as possible. The videos that were shown of this mudslide saw cars getting caught up in said flow and then whisked away without a care in the world.
But look at that Challenger, no way. Nah, dude, like mudslides, bro, like California, dude.
There's another thing that you're not thinking about either, about why this kind of thing is so bad. Think about that cleanup. Do you want to be one of the people who has to go and pick up all that mud? I don't think so. So, since we don't want to muddy the waters, I'll just move on. And be sure to like the video and subscribe, or else a mudslide might be heading your way.
Bro,
I know that's rude. I'm not the one who writes these things. Number 17. Hurricane Dorian. It's honestly a little bit mean to go and rank which natural disasters are the worst. I mean, after all, I've already shown you 3 very different kinds of disasters that cause devastation where they've hit. However, if you were to ask someone which natural disaster they would not want to be in, most people would say a hurricane. The song "Rock You Like a Hurricane" is accurate because when one forms and makes landfall, it can be one of the most devastating things around, and that's why we give them names, so that they can be recorded and remembered and haunt our lives for the rest of them. Case in point, Hurricane Dorian. It was an extremely powerful and catastrophic Category 5 hurricane, which became the most intense one on record to strike the Bahamas. Not only was it big and powerful, it had winds of up to 295 kilometers per hour, and it was able to hold those winds for well over a minute, scoring it a place on the list of the fastest winds ever recorded. If you see the clips from the hurricane, you're going to notice how these trees are barely withstanding the gusts, but it wasn't a hurricane that lasted merely for a moment. When it reached the Bahamas, it basically hovered in place, and when that happened, it would unleash a torrent of wind, water, and debris that led to the country getting blasted for over a day.
Like, bro, Florida, dude, Florida hurricanes are just normal. Like, that's like the starting point, you know? That's like the
even when it left the Bahamas and went to the United States, it was still powerful enough to leave serious damage. Just in the Bahamas, over 70,000 people were left homeless because the hurricane destroyed their homes or literally took their shelters out to sea. There's a reason that Category 5 hurricanes are labeled as the biggest and most devastating of the lot, because when one hits, it hits hard, and it can last a really long time, and no one is left unscarred.
Oh, shit.
Number 16. Fort Myers storm surge.
Fort Myers?
Some of you may be unfamiliar with what a storm surge is, so I'll give you a brief explanation. Basically, it's when a storm hits an area near a sea or an ocean, and because of that storm, the water levels rise. While that may not sound like something that you need to fear, what happens if that water keeps rising with nothing to stop it? This is something that also happened recently and was the result of a hurricane in Fort Myers, Florida, a state where everything and anything can happen. People were bracing for the potential of Hurricane Ian to land, but it wasn't the hurricane that they actually had to worry about, it was the storm surge. As this video will show in time-lapse fashion, the street goes from being completely fine to having a little bit of water on it to having more water and then more and then more and then more until you can't even tell that you're on a street in Fort Myers, Florida, because all you see is water and some small things poking out of it.
That shit, you know? Like, bro, just imagine, take like, what's it called?
If you paid attention to the red building on the left, you're going to notice that it went from being rooted in place to being uprooted by the storm surge, completely washing it away. For context, the storm surge rose 4.5 meters off the ground, more than enough to wash away buildings, drown out cars, and even make people wonder if they were really safe where they were. In the end, more than 100 people had lost their lives thanks to that storm surge and the winds that helped to fuel it. The area as a whole was without power for a month or so as well. So, So, no matter how you look at it, this was a truly devastating event, and you're almost mesmerized when you see the waters rise and take over everything.
Ah, no way.
Number 15.
No way, bro.
Iceland eruption.
Lava and ice.
So, I've shown you tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, mud.
You know what's funny, bro? Iceland is literally all like hot, while Greenland is literally all snow. So it's literally like the opposite of what the states are like. Or not, I said states, bro. I'm fucking retarded. I meant to say the countries. You know?
Slides, storm surges, there are plenty of things left, and you're probably waiting on a volcano. This was another recent event that it took place in 2021. Specifically, it was a volcano that was formed in a place in Iceland that I cannot pronounce for the life of me. And as you likely know, positioning is everything. This was only 30 kilometers from the nation's capital. Oh, but it does get better and or worse, because you see, while many people think about a volcano erupting in the grand fashion and ending in about a day or so, that's not always what happens. This eruption would be the first time that a volcano had erupted in over 800 years. And so, when it began, it did not want to stop at all, no matter how much people may have wanted it to. By that, I mean it first erupted in March of 2021, and it only ended in September of 2021. Yes, that's right. That volcano was active and spewing out lava for 6 months.
No way. Nah, bro, like, fucking like super.
Talk about going the distance. The good news was that, unlike movie volcanoes, this was not one that was an end of the world scenario kind of deal. Had it been that, well, those 6 months would have likely doomed the entire planet, so let's just be grateful that it wasn't. In fact, many people went to the volcano to see it in many lava flows and little explosions at its cap. They even tried to map out what the volcano was doing to the landscape, but that's hard to do when the lava's still pouring out. And then in 2022, it had another eruption that lasted for about a month.
No way.
Number 14. Himalaya rock slide. The Himalayas are already a pretty dangerous place to be, if I'm being honest. Things can go wrong there very easily, no matter what altitude you may be at. But when you have to worry about dealing with rock slides, well, that's an entire different level of fear. There are many ways that a rock slide can take place, but the biggest one, perhaps, is arguably also the scariest, because all it takes is the right amount of erosion from within the ground, and then all of a sudden, the very solid ground that the rocks and dirt were on is not so solid anymore. As you can see in this clip from the Himalayas, people are watching the side of the mountain when all of a sudden the rock slide begins, and it almost looks like a wave of water that's coming down the mountain, but it's not. It's actually a wave of dirt, mud, and stone, and if any of them had been caught in that, they would have likely all been dead. Now, if you still aren't seeing the terror in the event, first, you should get help, but second, pay close attention to the flow and notice that some of the massive boulders that are getting whisked away. These are not just small rocks, they're actually full-on multi-ton boulders that could crush you.
Bro, he said, are you crazy? Like, bro, I mean, I put fucking cereal in first, then the milk. Does that make me weird?
And they're being carried away as though they're light as a feather. That's not normal, and it's not right, and I'm glad that I wasn't caught up in it in that madness. Because to be quite frank, that would not rock. Number 13. Russian avalanche. Since we're already in the mountains, why don't we stay there to show you another kind of mountainous natural disaster that can take place, that being an avalanche. This one happened in Russia in 2021, but there is a little bit of a twist on this story. You see, this wasn't a random avalanche that would be caught on camera as someone tried to fly the snow torrent. Instead, it was an intentional strike that was done by an actual avalanche squad. Not only that, the avalanche was caused by artillery fire. Yes, they fired massive guns at the mountain to trigger the avalanche and then watched it come down from a safe place. Why in the world would they do that? Well, many times, people from numerous countries will go to the mountains that are likely to be triggered soon and cause the avalanche, doing it themselves so that they can know that it will be safe. To be clear, when they do this act, they block off the roads and other areas and warn people all around so that the avalanche can't cause them any harm. They'll also use professionals and proper explosives just to make sure that the avalanche comes down and not the entire mountain. Still though, as you watch the footage of the avalanche in action, you just have to wonder if that cameraman was scared, despite the fact that they were in a building behind some sturdy glass. Avalanches are big threats to skiers, snowboarders, hikers, and more, and people have been buried alive thanks to their ferocity. So be smart, don't provoke an avalanche, that is, unless you're a professional. Number 12, a cliffy beach. Now imagine this, you're on a beach that happens to be next to a cliff face. You don't really pay attention to it because you're more worried about catching your rays and getting into the nice waters. But that's hard to do when the cliff decides to come to you.
Bro, I'm sorry, jumping off a cliff near like a beach or whatever, an ocean, is a no-no for me. Just because there's rocks and shit, and like...
This took place in San Diego over at Black's Beach. Everything was going fine until one of the cliffs decided to implode on itself, sending all sorts of debris onto the beach. But then, as things deteriorated, the cliff kept sending more and more debris their way. It's almost unbelievable to see how it all starts falling down. And not just from one spot either. There were multiple places on that cliff that were coming down, as the camera will perfectly show. You can even see large chunks of the cliff area falling down with the rest of the rocks, not unlike that Himalayan rock slide that you saw earlier. And if you do want a clear visual of just how much that cliff came down, if you go back to the beginning where things get started and then you fast forward to the end, you're going to notice there's a massive mound of earth that's basically cutting the beach in half. That all took place in under 6 minutes, and beachgoers were smart not to get any closer as things began to fall.
Like, landslides,
Number 11. Flash flood.
Cliff, you know?
Floods are dangerous, no matter where you may be in the world. We've already shown you one version of it earlier via the storm surge, but one that many of you might be familiar with is the flash flood. These are when massive rainstorms come through an area and produce such rainfall that everything starts to flood because the ground can't handle the saturation levels. One such flash flood happened in June of last year at Utah's Capitol Reef National Park. The rain was so fast and intense that when people tried to get away, they were stranded. That's because the flash flood literally flooded their cars and took them away. And so what did the people do? Well, thankfully, they would be found by park rangers who were able to get them to some nearby shelters. But because of the flooding damaging the overall area, they had to be airlifted to safety. If you think about that, they went to a park to have fun and experience nature, and they had to deal with a massive flood that destroyed vehicles and could only leave once rescue services came and got them via helicopter. That just proves how dangerous these flash
floods, bro. The thing about floods is like you should have like a boat, you know, like just a boat ready, like attached to your trailer, so you can just go on that shit.
Floods can be. They come out of nowhere, cause their massive damage, and then they leave. Number 10. Japan earthquake tsunami.
Ooh, Japan.
What's worse than having a natural disaster take place in your country? How about one causing another? That's exactly what happened to Japan in 2011 when an earthquake of impressive magnitude hit the country so hard that it then caused a tsunami that was 40 meters tall to hit the nation and cause even more damage. Oh, but guess what? There was also technically a third disaster, as the nearby nuclear power plants almost had a meltdown because of the natural disasters hitting them. 3 of their cores straight up melted. And as you're seeing in the footage of the event, the devastation was insane to behold. People, cars, homes, and even more were all shook up and then washed away. Over 220 billion, with a B, dollars were done in damage, and that was reported from the earthquake and tsunami combo. And so, if nothing else, you should be grateful that this kind of thing doesn't happen very often, because if these kinds of 1-2 punches took place all over the world on a regular basis, there may well be a lot fewer places to live in. Number 9. Walking through a tornado.
Who the fuck does
I'm going to give you a kind of public service announcement about what not to do during one of these natural disasters.
Guys. I totally was planning on walking through a tornado in Oklahoma, bro. Like, damn, my plans are fucking ruined now. What am I gonna fucking do? Jack off my meat 10 times today? Like,
where in this case, I'm talking about tornadoes. When you're in the range of a tornado, you don't want to be outside, but you also don't want to be in a vehicle. That's because debris could pierce the vehicle, and if the tornado is powerful enough, it could straight up throw your vehicle around or even pick it up off the ground. But in this guy's case, he thought that it would be okay to ride out the tornado experience in his work van. Sure, it appears to be rather sudden, but he didn't have time to react, and as you watch the video, you'll see how devastating everything is, and how luck was on his side that the van even held up. In the end, don't push your luck like this guy. Be smart and get to safety.
I was gonna say, bro, like, you see.
Number 8. Chile's 𝐶albuco volcano. Now we'll do another volcano story just to spice things up. In 2015, Chile's Calbuco volcano erupted just 60 minutes after the first warning signs would go out. And when it did, it shot up massive stacks of ash into the air that people in the nearby towns could feel for themselves very quickly. Things were going downhill at such a fast rate that they actually cleared out everyone living about 24 kilometers away from the mountain. That's a wide range just to make sure that nobody gets hurt. This reaction video shows the time that the plume being shot into the air, and notice how everything was so calm, and then you see this massive thing in the sky. It's a truly stunning visual. Thankfully, nobody would get hurt in the eruption because of all the safety precautions. Number 7. Dust storms. Now, admittedly, dust storms aren't something that everyone has to deal with, depending on their location. However, when they do take place, they can be one of the most terrifying things that you could see. For example, in 2020, before the pandemic turned the world on its head.
How do you even breathe in that shit, bro? Like, you gotta wear like a whole mask, literally.
New South Wales and Australia would be hit with a massive dust storm that some would have sworn was the scene from a movie where you see the footage and pictures of it. The storm itself was caused by a mixture of thunderstorms and high winds, and that should tell you how impressive those were to whip up dust like this. Look at how small the towns appear compared to the dust storm. You wouldn't want to be caught in something like that. Number 6. Waves. Now, you may be thinking that waves would not be enough to cause people harm, but as in all things, life does find a way. In this case, at Durban Beach in South Africa, a cyclone was going on offshore, and while it was taking place, it made its way inland, and it had a massive effect on the ocean and the nearby beach.
Bro, no way. Are they like at a resort too?
To the extent that massive waves were coming inland and had the potential to hurt people. And as you can see in the clip, these are not waves that touch the edge of the beach and are done. These are reaching well inland and literally causing people to flee for their lives. Water can be equally as devastating as anything else out there. All it needs is the right stimulant. Number 5. Hail Russia. The next one is arguably an all-time classic when it comes to nature screwing up someone's day, or in this case, another beach full of people's day. In Russia, some people were having fun on a beach. It wasn't really all that bad of a day, just some clouds, so nothing could possibly go wrong, right? Well, all of a sudden it gets cloudy, and then it begins to rain, and then the winds pick up. The people are annoyed but not deterred, and they slowly get off the beach.
That beach thing doesn't look nice, bro, but I mean, it is Russia.
But that's when the ice begins to fall. That's right, a hailstorm of impressive size and power descended upon those beachgoers. And the casual exit that they were performing then turned into a full-on frenzy as they tried to get to cover and not be pelted by the ice. Nobody was having fun once that storm opened up. Number 4. Very certain we're screwed. Picture this. You're on a ferry in Germany, and the weather's a little bit rough. I'm there wearing a leather jacket. But these boats are built to withstand the weather so that you know you'll be fine. Except in this case, with this boat, the passengers learn that nature can pierce your bubble of protection quite easily. As you can see in the footage, there are waves hitting the windows of the ferry.
They're going underwater just like that fucking submarine, bro. Like, no,
and everything's fine until the windows begin to shatter. That's what got people's attention as the torrent of water came at them, and the boat slowly filled up. It was only made worse when more waves hit and added more water to the mix. Everybody was fine and able to get to safety. I got away on a surfboard, but it's still a very scary scenario because who would even be able to...
The ocean is more scary than someone blowing out your birthday candle, bro.
...to come to help you at that point in time. Number 3. The Dunlap Dam. How much faith do you put in your local infrastructure? Based on how things should work, you should feel comfortable in a building, on a bridge, or near something like a dam. But in Texas in 2019, the dam right near Lake Dunlap had a failure, and that caused the water to pour out of the area. Now, typically, I'd be talking about what happened to the people and the area outside the dam.
Bro, look at how it's going down like that, though. No, that's terrifying.
But this time, I'm going to focus on the water that came from the lake that many people had been living off of for decades. When it literally dried up because the dam had failed, their lives became ruined. If they worked around the lake or even on it, there was no lake to work on. Plus, any tourists who would have brought business to the area would not come because the lake was now gone. One failure ended up costing millions of dollars and seriously affecting the lives of everyone around the lake.
Say billions, bro. He said it like twice.
Number 2. Ice tsunami. Now, I bet you weren't expecting another fusion event, but in 2019, while a series of unbelievable natural disasters were happening all over North America, Lake Erie had its own unique thing going on because of an ice tsunami. Now, to be clear, that's when the frozen Lake Erie was hit by such strong winds that it forced the ice to move in nice big blocky chunks.
Imagine dying by that, bro. Like, that'd be the worst way to fucking go out, bro. All that just
those chunks went to the shoreline, where they were then slowly stacked up by the winds. And how big did they get? Well, only about 10 meters high. It was a wall of ice that even Game of Thrones would have been proud of, and no dragon was around to bring it down. So they likely had to do things the natural way and simply wait for it all to melt.
I said it.
Number 1.
All right.
Lava landslide. This last one is still a bit of a mystery in terms of what's actually going on. In China, there was a unique kind of landslide that would be caught on camera. However, unlike the ones that you've seen previously, this one did not move or even look like a landslide at some points. In the clip, it looks almost as though it were a moving river of lava. Slow, plodding, and most importantly, oozing. Apparently, this is known as an earth flow, and it's very dangerous, so don't get too close if you're in the range of one. But if you were to get stuck, it moves so slowly that you would have a chance to get out of its way before it crushes you. And as far as what it actually caused this particular earth flow, well, nobody really knows. That's all from the realm of...
Well, guys, that's it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Guys, if you live in Oklahoma, I really hope you stay safe because those tornadoes are no fucking joke. I don't know how you guys even function out there. Like, it's crazy as shit. If you enjoyed the reaction videos and you want more reactions like this in the future, you know what to do. And I'll see you in the next one. Peace.